Welcome to Moveable Dough. This is Steve Danielson. Join me each week as we explore the minds of living composers. We talk about their lives, their musical journeys, and of course, their music. For a complete archive of episodes as well as access to the shorter segments called Movable Snippets, visit my website sdcompose.com/moveabledough. Hey, this is Steve. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Moveable Dough. My guest today is Matthew Lyon Hazzard. Matt is a Filipino-American composer, conductor, singer, and educator. His compositions have won many awards over the years, including the grand prize in the 18th Street Singers 10th Anniversary Composition Competition, the 2017 ACDA Raymond W. Brock Student Composition Competition, and he was the inaugural winner of the Stephen Paulus Emerging Composer Composition Competition. It's a lot of composition competitions. Matt earned his BA and MAT in music composition from East Carolina University and an MM in choral conducting from the Bob Cole Conservatory at California State University, Long Beach. Matt Hazzard, welcome to Moveable Dough.
Thank you so much for having me.
So one thing I didn't mention in your bio is that you are currently working on a DMA at the University of Houston and have just passed your comprehensive exams to become ABD. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So I know.
Seriously, thank you.
I know from personal experience what a huge step that is. Secondly, can we get a brief glimpse into what your proposed dissertation topic is?
Yeah, totally. It's becoming my world slowly but surely, but it's on Eric Whitacre's The Sacred Veil.
Okay.
A narrative analysis of how he tells a story. It's pretty surprising. There's not a lot of scholarship on his works after 2004. Like there's like a little bit in 2009 with his Nox Armquay, but no one has really written on Eric for his music from the past few decades. And so I was like, oh, well, let me step in. So it seems like the perfect thing.
Fabulous.
My partner had John Talberg at Cal State Long Beach. He had performed the piece, I believe it was Utah, right before everything got shut down with the pandemic. So it was just like, oh, well, it was kind of like just like the perfect time to do it. So anyways.
Nice. We'll look forward to that scholarship. And for listeners, if you want to listen to my interview with Eric Whitacre, that was from season 4. Go back and take a listen to that as well. So Matt, you're still a fairly young composer, and yet you've already made a large mark on the choral world. So when did you start writing music?
Wow. Well, that's kind of humbling. I really appreciate that. I guess like I've just been doing my thing, and I turn around and it's like, oh yeah, there's been a few things, but I don't know if I necessarily made a mark. But I mean, for you to say that is really generous. What got me into composing? Was that the question? Just want to make sure.
Yeah. When did you start? Were you writing from a very young age, or?
Yeah, I always noodled around the piano when I was young. I took piano lessons when I was a wee babe, and I didn't retain any of them. I'm terrible at piano. But I get by. And I did a lot of songwriting when I was in high school, like, noodling on the guitar or playing on piano, lots of singer-songwriter stuff and electronic music. But I was always a choral geek ever since I lived in the Philippines for a couple of years when I was 7 and 8. And every Sunday we had mass at the country club, because I just find that like hilarious and delightful that it's just a very Catholic community. And it's like, oh yeah, let's go, like attend mass and then play golf, I guess. But anytime we were there, we had like basically song lyrics. It was very karaoke style. Like anyone who wanted to sing could sit with the choir, and the choir was good. Like everyone could sing, and so I'd sit next to my uncle, and we'd sing while the lyrics scrolled up on that the projector. And ever since then, I'd been nuts about singing. And I never wrote for choir, but I did write a lot of stuff on Finale. So just like for the fun dinky MIDI,
Yeah.
it's the best. And so I didn't really start until my first year of college. I was at ECU with Daniel Barra, who
Okay.
now teaches at UGA. And he had this amazing idea, which I can't wait to, totally implement myself one day. Should I be in the position, which is this idea of choral scholars, which was his graduate student working ensemble.
Okay.
So like the project choir, they would perform a concert every year of nothing but student works. And so you get to submit your music to Dan, and he would choose the very best, or depending on the demand. And I was ecstatic by that. And each grad student would choose a piece or get a piece that they would have to conduct. And so that was my first experience having a piece performed. It was delightful juvenilia, but I loved it. Ever since that moment, I've never looked back. I realized that's exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's great to have mentors that'll give you those opportunities.
Oh yeah.
So thinking back, what's one of your earliest musical memories that you can remember?
Earliest musical memories. Well, I guess I specifically to choir, or
No, just in general. What's the earliest musical thing you can remember in your life?
Oh, this is gonna make me tear up a bit. Like my mom singing to me every morning, like ever since I was a baby, like just walking in and her singing "Good morning, good morning, it's nice sleeping late," and so that comes to mind immediately.
Oh, that's nice. Just singing in the rain is a great place to start your life.
That's
true.
So
did you always plan on becoming a composer, or did you have other aspirations when you're growing up?
When I was in high school, I'm trying to put this in the most diplomatic way possible. I was definitely from a family where it's like, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, that kind of like these solid foundational, like high paying jobs. You'll do that, you'll be okay, and like that kind of familial pressure. But in high school, I realized that I just didn't want choir to ever end. I just wanted to go, can I just sing choir for the rest of my life? And so I tried to. So, told my mom I was going to go into music, and she made sure that I went all the way through. I had initially started as a music education major, but what I really wanted to do was music composition, because I really loved writing. I mean, I was doing it, but it felt like that I was taking that massive first step to actually writing for choir. And so around my second year, I was a music composition major, and it beat the ever living smack out of me. I was very, very humbled. I just wasn't used to being told what to do and how to do it. And, this whole thing called learning.
Right.
So I wasn't ready to learn that way. And so I came back that summer pretty bruised and nursing my ego, and I asked my mom, like, I don't know if I did the right thing. I don't know exactly what I wanted. And she said, nope, you chose this, you're gonna finish it, so you better figure it out. And I'm like,
Good
yeah,
for
Mom,
her.
good parenting, yes. But it made me ask, what do I really want to do with my life? And I just realized that the one thing that always made me happy was choir. Specifically choir. Like, if I could just sing it or conduct it or write for it or do anything related to choir for the rest of my life, I would be happy. So that was when that kind of locked into place, and here we are.
Cool. Well, it sounds like you and I need to hang out more, because I'm in the same boat.
Oh, sweet.
So I want to go back to your music education, though, because before pursuing a master's degree, you taught high school for 4 years. And I know that you've recently accepted a position as an adjunct professor at Fullerton College. Yeah. So how do you keep choral music alive and relevant to today's students? Put on your music educator hat.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because I was doing so many job applications where you're literally answering that exact same question, and in so many different ways. But in terms of relevancy, I think everyone has a human desire for community, for support, to make art. Everyone, especially like in college, a community college, you get every single walk of life, and you get them all at different states of and involvements with choral music. Some of them it's their first time and they just want to learn how to sing. Others are, they're preparing to transfer to a university and need to learn how to sight read. But there's I think it's like kind of two clumps. There's like the professional side of it, which is like, those kinds of solid goals of like, I want to get better at X or Y. And then there's the human side of it, which is like, this feeds the soul. I'm totally preaching to the choir here, but it's just like, no one's ever made that joke. I'm the first. I'm so glad to be. That it just encourages empathy. It encourages community. And one of the things that I think any student, actually, I just think this is people in general. People need community, and it's really hard to sustain community, especially after the pandemic. None of us, all of our social muscles have atrophied. They need like the craziest workout, and it's been like a whirlwind of a year, like reacclimating to talking to people again. So like true. not in like beautiful windows like we are now, but this is
right.
Like, which is a gift. I mean, like the future is so cool, but the heart of the matter is that there's nothing like making music with the person right beside you. Yeah. And I could go on and on about all the positive impacts that as like we all know that it encourages empathy, that it develops teamwork, it develops anything. But just as much as people will listen to music, and just as much as people will participate in any kind of community, sport, art, anything, like people want, it'll always be relevant. And so people want to do it. So I hope that answers the question.
No, that was perfect. Thanks. So you specifically mentioned in your bio that you are Filipino American. So do you see any particular influence on your compositions from your Filipino heritage?
I don't think in the way that might be implied or like implicit in that. Like, it's definitely influenced in that, like, I lived my life as, like a little short, well-tanned boy, and like, lived in the Philippines for a bit, and like I've definitely been raised in a Catholic Filipino household, and that's like informed a part of my soul. But as far as like how that comes out in me, it just like any kind of music that I write is implicitly me. I think that's what.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think that's how the heritage is shown. I think it's really in those little memories of like, oh, I fell in love with music and really singing through my mom, through my family, through the Catholic mass at the country club. And it's kind of shown its own way. I haven't been influenced necessarily by folk, not in the same way that I have with I don't know, I guess Radiohead and Bjork and
nice.
and video game music. That I feel like really gets in there. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your sound. So one of the quotes about you by 18th Street Singers says that you're known for creating stunning landscapes of sound. So how do you go about creating a landscape of sound?
Isn't that like the coolest quote? I felt like when I read that, I was like, oh, me, stunning. No, I have a great friend, Michael Martin, who was the DCA at Methodist University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Like, we would collaborate all the time. I would bring my students out there, and he was such a cheerleader, a supporter of my music and of me as an educator, like really just a great mentor. And one of the things as he was doing my music is that he said that the great challenge to anything that he's done by me, or by me, is how much it demands breath support. And like a true skill, because the sound is constant. And I never realized that about my music until he said that. Like, and that was pretty early on, really. Like, I mean, I feel like the bulk of my expression as a composer has really been ever since I went into grad school. So like for the past 5 years, I feel like my music has really kind of become what I wanted, or like it feels authentic to me. But I digress. I guess that stunning landscape of sound that still makes me like blood is it's just from, I think it's what people used to call impressionism, or I guess still call impressionism, which is I'm painting a picture. You can see like these are all paintings. Some of them are mine. That's me with a papaya guitar, and then some of them like Bernstein is my.
Yeah, for those that can't see Matt, he's pointing to paintings that they're hanging on his wall behind him.
Yeah, like the room is a huge gallery, and my mom was a decorative artist and a portrait artist when I was growing up, and we would paint and listen to Debussy. Like she loved Debussy, loved Ravel, and so all of that kind of just like really beautiful pictures given sound. It's that I feel is just that's a part of me. Like anytime I write, I feel like it's almost like painting. It's like I want to see something, I want to feel something, and it could be an image. It could also be an experience, and it can also be an emotion. So I feel like anytime I write, I'm like really giving myself the opportunity to really connect deeply with that emotion. Like it's very therapeutic in that way.
Yeah. So. Well, I think we will definitely hear some of these landscapes in the pieces that we listen to in the second half of the show here. So what is something that most people wouldn't know about your musical tastes? Like, are you a big like country western fan or into heavy metal or
no. I think maybe the maybe not necessarily surprised, but I'm a huge video game nerd.
Oh,
like
yeah?
I love video games and video game music, especially. And it's funny, like there's so many times that I've written something, and then after like the piece is written, I'll look back and I'll note that like, wait, this is from this, or this is from that. It actually happened with one of the songs that I got to share with you, The Prow. It has like these dolphins that are playing in the wake of a boat, like literal 4 soloists going da, 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 da. And like that sequence was actually like, it's just like I believe like certain major 7 chords or something like that. I only have my degree in music theory, like I should know this, but I don't really think that way very often. But like those chords actually are from this game called Donkey Kong Country. Are you a video gamer by chance?
No, I'm not really. No.
Yeah, so
I know who Donkey Kong is.
Yeah, so it's on like Donkey Kong. Like I didn't realize that at the time, but like I started like thinking about it, and I was like, that's definitely aquatic ambience. It's written by David Wise, who's incredible video game composer, very atmospheric, and so I guess when I thought water and dolphins, like I thought specifically of those underwater levels and this really beautiful music. And so you can find tons of videos online of just like video game music, like whole playlists. Like it is gorgeous, like total mood music to the nth degree. So that really resonates.
We've come a long way since Super Mario Brothers. Music.
Yeah.
All right, so I got one more question for you before we take a quick break. Who is another living composer that you think we should all go check out?
Jake Runestad.
Jake Runestad. Okay.
He's always the one which comes to mind. Just any time that I listen to Come to the Woods, or actually any number of his pieces, I feel like it's great music to cry to. Like just like his music just like takes your heart like and crushes it in the best, most beautiful way possible. It's really, I'm definitely a fan of like sad, emotional, overwhelming music, and also joyous music. Like his I feel like with Come to the Woods, it was the first time where, like, at the end of a choral piece, I cried tears of joy, just
Mm.
like the first time I listened to it. Like, just when you go through this entire journey of John Muir on the top of trees, and it's so vivid. It's like you're there, and then like he has this quiet moment where it's like, "Come to the woods, for here is rest," and you're just like, why am I crying? This is so beautiful. I'm sure I'm sure so many have heard his music already. I'm sorry not to like offer like new composer.
No, that's fantastic. I just want to know what's on your playlist at the moment. And listeners, I do recommend going back to the beginning of season 2 when I interviewed Jake. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to listen to some of Matt's compositions. Hey, Steve here. I want to take just a moment of our time together to tell you about the easiest way to make and host a podcast. It's called Anchor. I use Anchor to make and host Moveable Dough, and I've been extremely happy with the experience. They have creation tools on the site that help you create, record, publish, and share your podcast to multiple podcast streaming sources, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. The best part, it's absolutely free. No monthly cost, no hidden fees. So if you've been thinking about making a podcast, and you know you have, download the Anchor app today or visit anchor.fm to get started. Thanks for listening, and let's get back to Moveable Dough. Welcome back. I'm talking today with Matthew Lyon Hazzard. So, Matt, we're going to start today with The Prow, which you mentioned in the previous segment. So this piece is for SATB choir and piano. It's from a larger work called The Oceans Between Us. So this seems to be an interesting commission since the commissioner, Jonathan Tauberg, is not only the conductor of the premiere performance, but also the poet. So tell us a little bit about The Oceans Between Us, and then a little bit about The Prow in particular.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a bit of a sad story, I'll warn you, but with a very happy ending. But when I first arrived at Cal State Long Beach, I was studying with John at the time, and he was such a champion of my music. Like, he knew that I wrote, and I believe it was a competition that I had won that I had first brought to a conducting lesson because I just needed advice. I needed another year. I needed eyes, and he gave such amazing advice. And from there, like, we started a collaborative relationship. Like, he was like started performing my music and wanted to do this ocean concert, this ocean themed concert. We were going to put on this concert in the aquarium in Long Beach, and like in front of like like all the fishes, like just singing choral music. So cool. It was such a cool venue. And so we wanted to commission a piece about the sea, and he planned on performing As Is the Sea Marvelous, which is that piece that the 18th Street Singers were talking about. And they're very they're very generous. Oh man, they're awesome. But in any case, we were going to write this music, and so we had it outlined, we had it prepared. He was finding texts, but throughout all of this, like, John and I like developed a really fast friendship, and he had shared his poetry with me, and he was very like quite secretive about his poetry, but I was so like just overwhelmed by like his words. I was like, more, I want more. And so he had been trying to find poems, and I was like, why not write your own? You should write the text, and I'll set it. So we made that plan, and I believe it was a month later, it was March of 2018, his dad passed away. And yeah, Al had lived a full life. And John had written a series of poems, the Ocean Poems. It's a set of 7 poems, each one addressed to a different person, but all a reflection of grief after his dad's passing. And he gave it to me in May, and before I even looked at it, a week later, my dad died.
Oh,
And
sorry.
thank you. It's still like, even it's been 4 to 5 years, but it's still hard every single time to talk about it. But he when I went to Idaho and to wrap things up, and I came back, and the very first thing that I looked at were those poems, and I found it was like pieces of myself in those poems. Like, I found the first one that I read, which described exactly how I felt, was this poem called "There Is No Sea," which is actually a reference to Todd Boss's poem, "And So I Go On," which Jake set, and was written for John's deceased partner. So like it was like this intricate web, as you can see, but in that moment, like it was just like 3 lines, very simple. I would read them right now, but I would start crying. So I won't. But like it just described exactly what grief was like to me. It didn't say, actually, it didn't really say anything about grief. It didn't describe it. It just kind of puts in really simple terms like the magnitude
Sure.
of it. And
So
so
how does the prow fit in?
it's, well, after setting that text and like really experiencing grief, I felt like setting the ocean between us was like connecting with different, like just reconnecting with joy. So I had, oh my gosh, I was such a silly goose. I totally had set up this massive month-long excursion where I was going to visit all these people I love all across the US. And I'd done that before I got the news about my dad. And then, it'd only been a month. And then I had to go and surround myself with people, which was the last thing I wanted to do. But at the same time, it was probably the best possible thing I could have possibly done. And I was in Duluth with some choir friends up there, and there's this gorgeous view of the lake, Lake Superior, I think. And I started writing the prow because I kept on looking at the poems. I'm a real optimist, and I'm not okay with, even though I love experiencing sorrow, I'm not okay with being down. I'm not okay. Like, joy is so part of who I am. So I was like, how do I reconnect with this? So I chose the happiest poem in John's set, which was "The Prow," which is just describing his choir mentor's maiden voyage of like his boat that John got to be on. And as they were sailing it out, dolphins started playing in their wake. And it's just such an enchanting and entrancing image. And so I started setting that. And I felt like throughout the course of it, I steadily rediscovered joy, like just granting myself permission to feel it again.
That's fabulous. We're going to listen to "The Prow" here, performed by the Bob Cole Chamber Choir at California State University, Long Beach, with Jonathan Tallberg conducting. All right. The next piece today is When We Are Gone for double choir. This also has text from Jonathan Talberg. Would you mind if I read this poem?
Please.
Okay. When we're gone 10,000 years and waves still break gloriously on this radiant sand, gulls soaring, winds howling, mist spraying o'er the port, only then will we know if our lives rang true when you and I tumbled together amidst all of this blue. So I think the idea of living a fulfilling life is a quest for most people. So tell me sort of what you were thinking as you wrote this piece.
Oh, I was thinking about love. After I had finished my studies with John, our friendship by this point, like we had grieved together, we had mourned together, we had written these incredibly personal pieces reflecting on life and death and everything in between. And after after he was no longer my teacher, like it just felt like our relationship had taken this next step that we both wanted to take,
Hmm.
because it was for the first time I was like, oh, I'm finally feeling this feeling that everyone's been talking about. And it's a whole long story, with many twists and turns, but eventually I sat down, I looked at this poem, and it was at the very beginning of our relationship. And I wrote it, and to me, it just sounds like love. So forgive me, I'm
Nice.
getting a little teary just thinking about it.
Well, that
Yeah.
was a beautiful story. Thank you. All right. We're going to listen now to When We Are Gone, here performed again by the Bob Cole Chamber Choir. All right. So our third piece today is flight. This is for divided mixed chorus. This seems to be an example of one of your landscapes of sound. Lots of ascending lines and soaring upper voices give the feeling of flight. So what sort of flight was in your mind as you wrote this? Birds, planes, Superman? What was there?
IAH to LAX. It was
Okay.
exactly what I had called the poem when I wrote it. So when John and I started our relationship, I immediately dove into doctoral studies in University of Houston, and I had to fly. Like, we flew constantly to see each other, like doing long distance. And at first we thought, okay, maybe like once every month or once every 2 months or something. Quickly realized, no, I wasn't going to fly. Let's try for 3 weeks. And so I rapidly became a premier member with United, and I definitely definitely spent a sizable amount of income on flights, and so it was all about reconnecting. And when I first originally wrote it, it was for Ethan Sperry and Portland State University, and he had specifically wanted a piece that he could teach his now size restricted choir sections because of the pandemic. Like he could only have, I believe, 16 singers per choir. And so what he wanted to do was like, oh, what if we did an antiphonal piece? So like a double choir piece, so they could learn it separately and then come together and be on the theme of reconnecting. I mean, it's on everyone's minds. And so I started writing it, and it was originally for double choir. But before I knew it, it got more and more and more interwoven. And I think there's some pretty clear like times where it's totally double choir, like antiphonal, but there's a lot of times where it's not. But I chose the theme of flight because it was exactly what I was experiencing, which was flying to see John. Like, I think of reconnection, and I think of like that kind of that anxious excitement to see someone after a long time apart. And so that was the very first one that I mean, it just came to my mind. And I don't typically write my own text. I've tried in the past. I don't think they were successful, but this time the music was coming so fast, and I felt like I had the words to say, and I knew what I wanted to say. And so I gave my shot.
All right. Well, that's great with the sort of antiphonal choir connecting in those spots. I think that's exactly what you were shooting for. All right. Well, we're going to listen to Flight here, performed by the Portland State Chamber Choir with Ethan Sperry conducting. And by the way, we had Ethan Sperry on this program just about a month ago. So here we go. All right, our last piece today, So Much to Seek. This is another piece from The Oceans Between Us. This has a much more, I don't know, energetic feel than the Prow that we listened to earlier. So what aspect of the ocean were you trying to capture in this?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all an ocean, really. Well, specifically, it was a canyon.
Okay.
Yeah. So going back to that story of like the ocean between us,
Mm-hmm.
the ocean, the proverbial ocean, can describe the ocean standing between us and our loved ones, which me and my dad, or John and his dad, or me and ourselves, like who we were and who we want to be, and where we're stranded, especially particularly in relation to grief. And at this point, I was nearing the end of my it was nearing the end of summer, and we were getting ready to start performing the piece, and I knew exactly what I wanted to set. I wanted to set So Much to See and to Seek. But before I could, my friend wanted to bring me out to Las Vegas, just a final hurrah. He had graduated with his master's in voice at Cal State Long Beach, and I was at the end of my rope after a month of socializing and still well in the grief process. And I'm like, I don't want to see anyone. This is terrible. And my friend was like, I love you though, please, please. And so I was like, yeah. And so we went out there and did nothing you would typically expect from, I guess, Las Vegas. We played a ton of board games. It was really awesome. That's all we did. Playing board games, and it was supremely awesome. But in forcing myself to go out there, of course I found everything that I needed, which was friendship, support, love. And as I was driving back, the trip to Las Vegas from LA was so easy, and then when I was driving back, it was packed, like hours and hours. Everyone was leaving, so I decided, instead of taking the main road, it would have taken just as much time to take an off road and go south, and then try another path. And so I took this left, and before I knew it, I was on a dirt road alone in my car after the longest summer of my life, with mountains all around me in this massive valley and these constant banks. I would drive around, and it would seem like I could see forever. And slowly, one by one, all of these yucca trees start popping up everywhere. I believe they were yucca trees. I could be totally wrong, but it was so otherworldly. And all of a sudden, I just heard, I felt like I was in this lone canyon, and if I shouted across it, I would hear all these echoes. And so that was the very first thing that came to me, was so much to see and to seek, and then it being echoes across that valley. And so, yeah. And then I wrote it. And I felt like I'd finally, in this very, very early stage of the grief process, I felt like I had overcome a huge wave, and I had finally allowed myself to look forward. And that's, yeah.
All right.
Live life to the max.
Okay. Well, we are now going to listen to So Much to Seek, here performed by the Oregon Repertory Singers, again conducted by Ethan Sperry. Matt, what are you working on now that you can tell us about?
So I've been writing nonstop since finishing the doctorate, or like the doctoral coursework, and finishing comprehensive exams. I feel this level of freedom that I've never felt before. And it's so unstructured. I'm still trying to get used to it, but I've found myself hungry to write. I spent over a year. It had been over a year since I had written any choral piece, because throughout my last year, I took composition lessons as part of my minor. And we were doing instrumental, because that's where I stood to grow. And it was the one B that I got.
We'll keep that secret.
His composition, I'm laughing at myself. I'm like, of course it would be. I just think it's hilarious. But anyways, after that long time away from what I really love to write, which is choral music, almost exclusively, I came back, and my little brother commissioned me to write a love song for his girlfriend. They're approaching their first anniversary. He, like me, and I guess all three of us Hazzard boys, didn't find love until like 28, 29. And like it's like hole in one. It's just like a hole in one waiting throughout, like that takes 3 decades to make that first swing. And he wanted something that sounded like warm coffee on a Sunday morning, and made something that made him feel the way that anytime that his girlfriend looks up at him, and that's like, it's so new to him, just like it was so new to me. And that kind of electric feeling of like, you must be protected, you're the most precious person on the planet, and I love you, just like from them being adorable. And so I looked across John's poems, because I immediately had one in mind. John had written these poems for the pandemic, or during the pandemic. He calls it the Polaroids from the pandemic. And so the very first poem is him waking up before I have, and him describing light coming from the window and me being shrouded in white sheets. And it's really a testament to love. And so it's called Love Poetry. And right now, John is working with it with his university choir at the Bob Cole Conservatory. And so that's getting ready to be performed. And at the same time, I just finished, like within a week, I finished a setting of Salve Regina, which is unusual because I don't really set sacred texts often, but I was like, I must write, and this text is so dramatic and intense, and like, and so I have to. And so I did, and now I'm already moving on. I was actually just today, I was looking at texts from John, because you can tell I adore his text, and I just feel like so much of what he writes speaks to my soul. Like I don't know how to say it. Well, if John wrote it, then it would have been said perfectly. His text expresses my soul. So I've been looking at that, and that's another like kind of like mixture of a waves echoes piece.
Sure.
So lots.
Awesome. Well, you want to plug your website real quick, let people know where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Lyon.Hazzard.com. That's LYONHAZZARD.com.
All right. Are you on social media as well?
I am. Matthew Lyon Hazzard on the Facebook, and I think I'm on Instagram too, but I'm really terrible with social media.
Well, hey, listeners out there, as we are nearing the end of season 5, take a moment and click the button to become a supporting listener of Moveable Dough. For less than $12 a year, that's less than $1 a month, you can help me keep the music moving. There's a link in the show notes, or you can visit anchor.fm/Moveable Dough and click where it says support. Well, Matthew Hazzard, it's been a pleasure to get to know how your mind works and talk with you today. Thank you for joining me for Moveable Dough.
Thank you so much for having me.
My guest today was composer and soon-to-be Dr. Matthew Lyon Hazzard. If you have a recommendation for a future guest or an idea for the show, please email me at moveabledough@gmail.com. This is Steve Danielson. Keep the music moving.